The dining hall of the Celestial Drift hummed with the usual cacophony of intergalactic commerce. Traders from a dozen species haggled over contracts, their translator implants converting clicks, whistles, and guttural rumbles into comprehensible speech. The air smelled of ozone and exotic spices, a combination that made May's human nose twitch. She sat alone at a corner table, her modest meal spread before her, protein bars she'd brought from Earth, a few strips of dried meat and a canister of water. It wasn't much, but it was hers. May had learned long ago that human food was either coveted or reviled by alien species. There was rarely middle ground. A soft chittering sound drew her attention downward. 3 small creatures, huddled beneath her table, their luminous eyes fixed on her plate. They were Cathara cubs, May realized, mammalian quadrupeds with silver-blue fur and oversized ears that twitched at every sound. Their species was rare in this sector, and these 3 looked thin, their ribs visible beneath their downy coats. May's heart clenched. She'd always been a sucker for strays. "Hey there," she whispered, tearing off a piece of her protein bar. She lowered it slowly, and the boldest cub, slightly larger than the others, crept forward. Its nose quivered as it sniffed her offering, then delicately took it from her fingers. The other 2 cubs surged forward immediately, their earlier caution forgotten. May smiled and broke off more pieces, distributing them evenly. The largest cub positioned itself closest to her, its body language protective. "That one had spirit. You're a fierce little thing, aren't you?" May murmured. "I'll call you Tor. You look like a Tor." Tor's ears perked up at the sound, as if acknowledging the name. For several minutes, May shared her meager meal with the cubs, their purring chirps warming something in her chest that had been cold since leaving Earth. Out here, millions of light years from home, moments of connection were precious, then the moment shattered. Unacceptable. A towering figure loomed over her table, a Vrexian station guard, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. "Feeding vermin is prohibited on this station. Violation code 732. May looked up calmly, though her pulse quickened. "They're not vermin. They're children. They are unregistered organisms." The guard's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Your meal is confiscated as evidence of regulatory breach." Before May could protest, the guard reached for her plate. That's when Tor struck. The cub launched itself onto the table with surprising speed, planting its small body between the guard's grasping appendage and May's food. A sound erupted from Tor's throat. Not a chirp or a purr, but a genuine snarl, high-pitched but unmistakably threatening. The cub's lips pulled back to reveal needle-sharp teeth. The other 2 cubs scrambled onto the table as well, flanking Tor and adding their own snarls to the challenge. Together, they formed a living barrier around May's plate. The Vrexian guard jerked back, antennae twitching in confusion. "The creatures are defending?" May's eyes widened. She'd seen protective behavior in animals before, but this was different. These cubs had been strangers to her minutes ago, yet they were willing to challenge a being 10 times their size. For her. Because she'd fed them. "Stand down," the guard commanded, but the cubs held their ground. Tor's snarl intensified, and the cub took a step forward, tiny claws extended. Other patrons had stopped eating to watch. A Kellen merchant's eye stalk swiveled toward the commotion. A Dravian pilot paused mid-drink, its gill flaps fluttering with interest. "They're just hungry," May said quietly, though her voice carried an edge of steel. "I'm sharing my food with them. That's not a crime. Station regulations can make an exception for basic compassion," May interrupted. She stood slowly, keeping her hands visible and non-threatening, but her posture was firm. "Or are you really going to explain to your superiors that you started an incident over 3 starving cubs?" The guard's compound eyes reflected the lights in fragmented patterns, a sign of internal conflict, May had learned. Vrexians were hierarchical. They respected strength but also feared bureaucratic consequences. Tor growled again, a sound that seemed too large for such a small body. "What species is the human?" Someone muttered from another table. "They say humans form bonds quickly," another voice answered. "Pack bonding, they call it. Dangerous trait." May hadn't moved, but she felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her now. Humans were still relatively new to this part of the galaxy. Their reputation built more on rumors than facts. Some said humans were weak, emotional creatures. Others whispered darker stories about human persistence, about how they'd never been successfully conquered on their own world, because they simply refused to stop fighting. The guard seemed to be reassessing the situation. The cubs maintained their defensive stance, and May realized something profound was happening, not just here, but in the perceptions of everyone watching. These aliens were witnessing something fundamentally human: the willingness to share with the vulnerable, and the fierce loyalty it inspired in return. "The cubs stay," May said softly. "The food stays, and I'd appreciate it if you'd leave us alone." The Vrexian guard's mandibles worked silently for a moment. Then, with a sharp click that might have been resignation or respect, it stepped back. "Maintain order," the guard said stiffly, then retreated toward the exit. The dining hall remained silent for 3 heartbeats. Then conversation gradually resumed, though May caught more than a few glances still directed her way. She sat back down, and Tor immediately relaxed, the aggressive posture melting into something closer to pride. The cub looked up at May with those luminous eyes, and May could have sworn she saw understanding there. "Thank you," May whispered, reaching out slowly. Tor allowed the contact, leaning into May's palm as she scratched behind those oversized ears. The other 2 cubs resumed eating, their fear forgotten. May divided the rest of her meal among them, keeping only enough for herself to stave off hunger. It didn't matter that she'd be a little hungry later. What mattered was this: connection, loyalty, the simple act of caring transcending species barriers. A Kellan merchant approached her table cautiously. "Human," it said, its translator rendering the words in a respectful tone. "Those are Cathara cubs. Their species values honor above all else. They will remember what you did," May smiled. "I hope so." "Everyone should be remembered for their kindnesses, don't you think?" The merchant's eye stalks dipped in what might have been a nod, then retreated. Tor curled up beside May's plate, and the other cubs followed suit, their bellies full for the first time in who knew how long. May rested her hand on Tor's warm fur, feeling the steady rhythm of the cub's breathing. Out here, in the cold vastness of space, humans were still learning their place among the stars. But May suspected that moments like this, small, acts of defiance wrapped in compassion, might be what defined her. Species in the eyes of the galaxy. They'd tried to take the humans' plate away the cubs had snarled, until it was returned and the universe took note.